All right. Studio is active.
And we are live.
Beautiful.
Welcome, everybody. Football Diehards here on the job. We'll let a few people show up and get some of our work out of the way here. I'll put some comments in the chat to get it all started. Obviously, some news of interest today. If you haven't been to the website, the Adrian Peterson's release is exciting. Not expected by Adrian Peterson or pretty much anybody, but apparently a reflection of what the other backs were doing, and we'll get into that a little bit here. And we'll talk some other running backs that you might be interested in as well. And we'll talk some handcuffing today. And it's, handcuffing is an interesting thing. It's something I don't always do because I don't like to pay the premium. But there are backs where it can be helpful. So let me get the tweet out.
You know what's interesting with Adrian Peterson last night in the 10-team mock we did, he didn't go unless I missed him.
I didn't see him go. I did see Gibson. Antonio Gibson's been going well ahead of him. In most of the 12-team drafts I'm in, I'll see Peterson go into double digits. We'll see basically Gibson going in the 7th round, if not sooner. Now, he'll certainly go sooner. But, the question is what this does to Bryce Love. They say they like Peyton Barber as well, so maybe that's going to be something we have to figure out and sort through. J.D. McKissick also in the mix. I don't know how many of these guys deep you want to go on a team that's liable to not be that great. But Gibson is definitely the guy of interest, and just, heard a lot of hype about him, and I wasn't buying into it necessarily because he seems like kind of a narrow band player. I like talk about using him as a split out, not so much as a running back, not as experienced a runner as some of the other backs, but a great pass catcher. And I saw some of the footage on NFL Network watching some practices, and the eyeball test is pretty good. He's big, he's powerful, he's fast, catches the ball extremely well. So they still talk like they want J.D. McKissick to have a role, so we'll see how it plays out. But right now, you're drafting Gibson. I think the late round flyer is probably Bryce Love. Maybe Peyton Barber starts the season as the early down guy. I don't know that I want to invest draft capital in that because he has not been great as the early down guy in previous stops, or at his previous stop in Tampa Bay. So I mean, he was a good workload guy, but and he would have reasonable weeks, but it's just. I think it's going to be hard to count on in Washington. So Antonio Gibson's the guy right now. Is ADP. Let's see what he is today. I haven't checked since this news came out, and it's possible it has changed a bit.
I got to find the O-line I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. But I'm wondering what the Washington O-line is.
Not the best.
Yeah.
I could probably bring that up. Antonio Gibson still going in the 7th round.
Yep.
So, not optimal. Offensive line rankings. Daniel Kelly, who wrote for us for the Football Diehards magazine, has Washington at 25th. So, not a favorable offensive line. So,
yeah,
which makes a little more sense to get players out in space. Maybe that's what Gibson is going to be, that kind of guy they can get loose, and maybe he's a better runner than we expect. Just wasn't that experienced, or they didn't use him that heavily as a runner in college. Thanks for joining us. If you're here, I'm Bob Harris. He's Emil Kadlec. We're going to talk some running backs today. You can ask us anything. That's what we're here for. Ask us anything. If you're heading into drafts, we're heading into an important stretch here of drafting. Final week leading up to the season. It looks like there will be a season. I don't like to get too far in front of anything, but it seems like all the at least COVID-related things seem to be in check and handled. In fact, they have protocols in place for players who are getting released this weekend so they can quickly move to new teams. They'll be allowed to stay in the team hotel, continue getting tested. So if another team wants to sign them after they're released, they can make the quick jump to the other team's headquarters without missing any of their testing or beats, and that won't slow down their integration into that team. Hit the subscribe button below this very video if you'd like to continue getting our content. We will have content throughout the regular season. I, of course, will be doing a injury preview for Sunday on Saturday afternoon. It's kind of handy, get you up to speed, but we'll also have live videos on Wednesday nights with lineup and interactive, allow lineup questions, etc. We'll have live video Sunday morning in advance of kickoff, so there's that. Tons of content on the site, the flash update. Regular season content will go live next week. We're still working along with the August update, so plenty of draft information. We'll keep the draft rankings and all the draft cheat sheets available to you, the configurable cheat sheet, right up through next Sunday. So don't think that just goes away just because the regular season starts Thursday night. There's plenty of people, a lot of the high stakes leagues don't draft until the weekend. They just don't. So we keep everything up and ready for you along with the in-season content. So if you haven't been there, go to footballdiehards.com/free trial. Check it all out. We think you'll like it. If you do like it and you want to purchase it, use the promo code Diehards to get a 15% discount. We're starting to get questions. Eric Miller wants to know how safe Dalvin Cook is and to not hold out or fake injury due to contract issues. More safe than Kamara. I'm going to be, I mean, I think reasonably safe. The contract talks have broke down. The thing for in Cook's case in particular is if he holds out, he doesn't gain an accrued year of value, accrued year against this, for free agency, which essentially means instead of being an unrestricted free agent next year, he's a restricted free agent, limits himself to $5 or $6 million as opposed to whatever the open market bears. So I feel he's relatively safe. If you think he's the kind of person who would fake an injury, then you probably shouldn't draft him. The same goes for Kamara. So, I think the hold-ins are something that have happened during training camp because they're not allowed to hold out. So that's why you've seen kind of the migraines in the case of Joe Mixon. I'm not saying they weren't real, but we saw it with Melvin Ingram. There's talk we're seeing it with DeAndre Hopkins, who wants a new contract as well in Arizona and hasn't been practicing much. So I guess that would be my case. If you really think that someone is going to fake an injury for contract reasons, you should draft somebody who is under contract and you don't have those fears. Emil, any thoughts on that?
It's frustrating. A lot of times, most of the time, these things go away, and it's even worse, like you said, with the new collective bargaining agreement, where if he misses time, that's now the cute little "I'm sick" stuff or "I'm hurt." If you're really that worried, like you said, then drop him down. But you can get some value. We just that best ball that we're in right now, Fab's best ball. I think he went with the 8th pick. And I had the 9th pick, and I was ready to take him at 9, but he went with the 8. I think sometimes you got to not worry about those. Just go for it. But if it still bugs you that much, then avoid them.
Yeah, we saw the other night that Kamara, the day that all the hype got really out of hand, or really started, that they were willing to trade him, that he was willing to be traded, all that talk. You got him with the 9th pick or a 10th pick?
It was 9th or 10th.
You can leverage these things for value, but I do think there's enough value. I think there's enough solid plays or plays I'm comfortable with in the first round that if that was a concern for me, I would just pivot and stay away from it, Eric. So there's that. Love to have more questions. We're going to talk a little bit today, and if you missed it as you're just tuning in, we were talking about Adrian Peterson getting released by the Washington football team. Cook ahead of Kamara in both for me, but I think it's pretty even in either format.
Non-Ppr, okay.
Yeah, do you have some thoughts on that, Emil?
Yeah, I would say Cook ahead of Kamara right now in non-PPR.
Yeah, I think
but not by much.
Well, yeah, it's the Gary Kubiak offense, right? It's run heavy, it's designed. We've seen pretty much, we can go back to Terrell Davis, and trace the history of running backs who have run extremely well in this offense, because it's designed for that, and I think he'll catch the ball fine. We saw last year. I mean, essentially the Kubiak offense, although he was not the coordinator calling the plays, that Cook, even missing some time late in the season, ran for 1,100 yards, caught 500 and some yards. So, and look, I think Kamara could bounce back and have a great year. I rank them 4 and 5 right now. And that's why. So if you had a preference, pretending I have the granularity to predict that would be silly. I mean, it's my preference. So if your preference is Kamara, then I'm totally comfortable with that. I think, would not argue against that at all. But getting back, in case you missed it, the Washington football team's backfield has changed. Adrian Peterson, in a bit of a surprise, was released. It sounded like he was going to be the guy. He thought he was going to be the guy. I think we all did, right up until he wasn't this morning, about 6 a.m. my time, so about 8 o'clock Eastern. And he still wants to play, so expect Adrian Peterson to make the rounds and get signed by somebody at some point, and that'll maybe cause us some issues going forward as well for players you've already drafted. But I think in this case, as a player you've already drafted, the investment is, I have a number of shares of him because I was getting him into double digits, right? I kind of knew that, he was not a guy I'd want to play every single week, or I wasn't going to have to play every single week. So I'm fine waiting it out. It's not heartbreaking. What is heartbreaking is passing on all those shares of Antonio Gibson while they were cheap, because they're not going to get any cheaper in the coming days. So right now he's going in the early 7th, Emil. I'm guessing you'll see today that'll spike up to 5th round, maybe even 4th round. Would not be shocking. Where are you going to be comfortable taking Antonio Gibson?
Right now I have him ranked 25th on my rankings.
You're a little higher than me.
Yeah, I've got him up there a little bit, and I don't know where that falls into rounds. Maybe I ought to
probably about the 5th round, I'm guessing.
Okay.
4th round, 4th, 5th.
I worry, like we talked a bit about the somebody's going to be playing there. Obviously, he's the guy up, and he's questionable as far as he wasn't a big runner in college, even though he's a big guy. But if they can throw him the ball some, and of course you've got the other guys you talked about and Bryce, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll see where he's going. He's another rookie where he's that shiny toy. He hasn't done anything wrong yet, and he's looked good in practice. So I've got him at 24, 25. That's pretty high. But maybe we'll see what happens in some of the other leagues. And we have a mock tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock ET on Saturday. We'll see where he goes then.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I was just going to bring up a little bit on, I guess, Bryce Love is the guy that people are a little interested in as well. Suffered a knee injury coming out of college, spent last year on IR. And kind of there's been hope for him. He's a very good runner in college, so maybe that'll be the 1-2 punch, but Peyton Barber is there, so be cautious with this one until you get it figured out. Maybe it's a waiver wire type claim move in the coming days.
But you could take Love late. I don't have his ADP in front of me, but he's going really late. So if you want to take Antonio in, the 4th or 5th or 6th round, you could back him up with Love, with the understanding that somebody else may be the backup.
Yeah, Love's going 12th round, so it's essentially
it's not too bad.
Free.
It's going to go up a little though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely will. And so will Peyton Barber will come up on the radar, I'm guessing. And I don't know if J.D. McKissick will, but maybe he should. Neil Feldman wants to know, Emil, I have the 11th and 14th pick in his PPR league. He has Kenyon Drake in the 4th and DJ Moore in the 10th as keepers. Who should I look to target his first 2 picks? These are difficult because we don't know who everyone is keeping. So, it would be easy if everyone was there, but they're not. So, Neil, if you could just give us maybe 4 or 5 players that you think are going to be available at that point, and we could rank them for you.
So is he saying that he's got
the 11th
Drake and he has DJ Moore on his roster?
Yeah, in the 4th and 10th round as keepers. So
that's nice.
Who should he look to target as his first 2 picks? It's hard to say because we don't know who's available. So my suggestion is, Neil, if you could put in a range of maybe 4, 5, 6 guys that you think might be there, we could rank them for you. And no problem being late, Timothy Miller. We're taking questions for the next 45 minutes plus. So we're glad you came. Again, if you're new to this, hit the subscribe button right there, right below Emil Kadlec. in his smiling visage. And we'll go from there. And sorry, I don't mean to slough off your question, Neil. It's just it's impossible to know. I mean, what if we recommend 5 guys that are already there, that are already taken? So just save.
Well,
us
it's
a little
nice
trouble.
that he's got a good receiver, so he can really go
And
running
great
back
values.
or receiver.
Yeah, great values.
You know, I don't know how quickly you want to go with a tight end. So, like you said, well, maybe you can tell us a few more options, and we'll be able to give you some advice there.
So we're going to talk a little bit about potential handcuffs and who the potential handcuffs are for some of the top backs and whether you're actually comfortable drafting them, Emil. So let's start at the top with Christian McCaffrey. Pretty much unanimously the first player I've seen in, I think there's been one draft out of the, I'm not going to, I don't know, I'm not sure how many I've been in. It's well over 50 drafts, probably closing in on 100. I've seen Saquon Barkley go once. I've seen Christian McCaffrey go 99% of the time or the rest of the time. So, a lot of people assume his handcuff will be Reggie Bonifant because it kind of was last year. But they bring in Mike Davis. And, some of these dicey ones like this, like it seems like Mike Davis has locked himself in as the handcuff ammo. But man, final cut day could be compelling. Is this one that you're interested, just given the overall durability that we've seen from Christian McCaffrey and his unique skill set? Is it really clear that drafting a handcuff, you'd actually get a Christian McCaffrey light?
Yeah, probably not. And he's been incredible, McCaffrey has, but there's always a point where somebody may get hurt. Davis right now is 19th round ADP. So you'd have to be in a deep league to consider taking him or losing him to somebody else. And, if you're in an 18-team league and you've got a great roster and you can't figure out what you're doing, it may be worth putting Davis in the 18th round and, just giving you some reliability there. But obviously, Davis is not going to produce like McCaffrey's going to produce. But that would be if you have a 16-team league, 16 roster spots, rounds, I don't think you'd do it.
Yeah, it's this is a case where, maybe you could, obviously if something happens to McCaffrey, the waiver wire is going to go nuts, right? So it's going to be difficult to get him. But you're right. I don't feel like, and I don't know that even if it was Mike Davis is the guy that they're calling the number 2, if he wouldn't share and split that heavy workload, and you're really not getting it. That said, it's basically free. It is 19th round. So if you're in a 16-team, your 16-man roster draft, and it's your last pick and you don't have anything else to do and you have Christian McCaffrey, I'd be for that. I'm just not for paying for handcuffs. I'm not against handcuffs, and you probably wouldn't have to pay for him, so I think that's a fair deal. Eric came back, Emil, and came, or Neil did, and said, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, Josh Jacobs, Edwards-Helaire may all be available to him. So if I was ranking those players, I would go Adams, and given your current roster, the things you have, I would go Adams, I would go Kelsey. Oh, Edwards-Helaire's there. I would go Edwards-Helaire. I would go Adams. I would go Kelsey, Jacobs, and Hill. For me, would be the order I would take.
Well, he's got the 11 spots, so there's only going to be 12 and 13 go. So you may be able to get, well, you got to look at it. If you think that Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill will still be there with your 14th pick, then you could take a running back. Vice versa, if you think, well, there's only going to, if there's 4 of those quality running backs or 3 quality running backs, then you can take the receiver and one of them will be left. Kelsey, I just think it's too early to take Kelsey, not knowing any more about your league. So I would do one of those 2 options with running back, receiver.
Yeah, Kelsey would not be my first pick. I would definitely go Edwards-Helaire. And if you do that, maybe you want to avoid the other Chiefs just in case. It's a pretty good basket to put all your eggs in if you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And since you already have some other eggs that are in pretty good baskets as well, I would not be against taking both Chiefs with both those picks. But that would be my order: Edwards-Helaire, Adams, Kelsey, Jacobs, Hill. Emil, in a high-stakes league, Eric Miller has an 8-man high-stakes league.
Woo.
Quarterbacks get 6 points per touchdown. Is Mahomes a potential first-round pick after the top 5 or 6 elite running backs are off the board? He won this league last year, taking Mahomes with the 7th pick.
The answer is yes. With only 8 teams, you could take a quarterback ultra late, but since you're going to be able to get running backs and receivers that are really high quality. You're going to be able to pick free agents up. I'd be very tempted to take a quarterback then. It's different than normal, but with 8 teams, I think it's a definite option.
Yeah, I do prefer Mahomes' slight edge. I mean, well, I'm going to rephrase that. I have Lamar Jackson ranked over Patrick Mahomes, but that value is much closer in a 6-point per TD pass league to me. So I wouldn't, and for the reason Emil said, I mean, it's an 8-man league, so you're going to have value down the board at all the positions. That would include quarterback as well.
Yes, it would.
I would say though, if you're expecting Mahomes to put up the kind of numbers that we saw maybe between, before he was hurt last year, the season before last, or the kind of Lamar Jackson type totals we saw last year, then certainly that's worth grabbing a quarterback early if that's what your expectation is. So, here's the guy that Saquon Barkley. We just kind of got an idea that Wayne Gallman has established himself, it appears, as the number 2. Dion Lewis is going to have a role, but that role is not like the handcuff type, or at least the early down player if something were to happen. Barkley, we've kind of seen this movie before with Gallman. It wasn't great, but I mean, is it viable? What's his current ADP? I don't have him on my
15th round, late 15th round.
Again, it's a freebie. I kind of like freebies, but the expectations would be very low. Because I think for the guys like McCaffrey and Barkley, for sure, it's going to be hard to recreate their unique abilities and skills.
But if you're securing a first-round pick, when I get to the 15th round, there's probably so much still value. Some guys like Joshua Kelly that I'd like to take but so you're going to have to give up one of those guys to back up your number 1 pick. But then again, Barkley has had some injury issues, so maybe it's a smart decision.
Also came back from his injury last year very quickly. 3-game absence with a high ankle sprain is amazing. If you guys want to jump in, you can ask questions about anything. We're talking about running backs here, just to have something to talk about, and handcuffs. I thought it was an interesting topic today. So. But I know if you're preparing for your drafts, please feel free to jump in. Please feel free to hit the website at any time. It's footballdiehards.com, and tons of stuff going on. Our August update draft guide is rolling along. News and information going up as we speak these very words. Rankings available, updated constantly to reflect all the latest developments. Configurable cheat sheet that will allow you to go and plug in your league's parameters. Say you're in that 8-man league and 6 points per TD pass. You can plug all that in along with the rest of your information in, and it'll print out our cheat sheet based on what your parameters are. So always a good idea. Even if, look, I mean, I'm not telling you to, you want to draft off somebody else's, rankings or knowledge, but it's always good to have a guide. Also use Emil's Stomp tool that he created that will help you understand where to draft players. If you like a player on ADP a little higher, it gives you an idea where to draft guys. ADP is something we talk about a lot, average draft position. Doesn't tell you when to draft somebody. It tells you when somebody's being drafted, and there is a distinction there, right? The average draft position is like, okay, I want this guy. I should probably draft him a little higher than the average draft position to make sure I secure his services. So the Stomp tool will help you set up your cheat sheet to do that and help you identify the players you want. Brian Larkin has a question, Emil. On Monday, he wanted to know the scoring of the QBs. I would make Breeze numbers 4.6 passing, 1 point every 50 yards, 2 for picks. Configure the cheat sheet, gets him an FFE. All right, Emil.
So he's number 4 with those scoring. Is that what he's saying?
Right. So is it the -2 for picks is probably a big factor?
That adds in. The interception definitely add in. 6 points per touchdown, maybe that helps. 1 point for every 50 yards, that may actually help a little because there's some quarterbacks that score more. So those probably all push him up a little bit. 4 is kind of high. I'm a little surprised. I'll have to run that. Maybe I'll run that right now real quick while we're talking.
Yep.
But yeah, a little here and a little there probably did that because he's very low on interceptions.
Yeah, I mean, it maybe depends on whose rankings you used. I think I might have him higher than other people if you were using my rankings, for example. That might be a figure too. Let me check and see where I have them ranked as opposed to others. But yes, that is entirely possible. I have 9, 10th in the overall.
So 6 points for that. We're going to go down to 50 minus 2.
So yeah. All right, I'll go on to some of the other questions here. He's using
he goes to
rank.
5 with the staff. Well, that's with mine. Let me go to the staff. Sorry.
Yeah, staff is one up. So Eric Miller wants to know, isn't Aaron Jones being grossly underrated simply because most feel there will be a major TD regression from 19 this year? I'm in the top 10 regardless of scoring method. Yes, he is being underrated, or he's not going like if everyone thought he was going to score 19 touchdowns again, he would be a top 5 running back. And it's just, that's a unusually high number of touchdowns. If you think he's going to continue to get that same workload, I think that's, it's not unreasonable to have him in your top 10. I have him in my top 15 for sure. So look, and mostly I just think that there's some other players that I prefer to him. It's not so much that I'm down on him. I think he's right in that next tier of players. Let me pull up my rankings.
Yeah, I have him around 10.
Yeah,
he's just a guy who, every year you're going to get somebody's got to fall in everybody's eyes, and a lot of times we get all this hope and we're pushing guys up, and when we push guys up, somebody comes down, and then you doubt, wow, is this guy still valuable to me? Yeah, he's still valuable. They want to run there, but you've got to factor in: is he going to get 19 total touchdowns? If he gets a little less, maybe they use Dylan at the goal line a little bit if they get comfortable with him, and he's going to drop a little. But he was pretty high at the end of the year, so a 10th pick, a 10th ranked running back is still a very valuable position. You can get him later in your draft.
All right, so Brian is still not happy with the way that's working out with the after Wilson ahead of Dak. I don't blame him. So, the algorithm is what the algorithm says.
Basically, I show Breeze at 5. With the scoring he told me. I don't know why it would be 6. So maybe there's something I haven't I don't know what's the rushing. But anyway, maybe the rushing's a little less too, and that's why, because if you give a little less on rushing, obviously Breeze will slide over Dak.
Yeah, maybe Brian, you could email Emil, and you guys could straighten that out to his satisfaction or not.
Gotcha.
Steve wants to know, will Daniel Jones have a big year PPR with touchdown equals to 6 points? I think he will have a big year. I think he's going to take a step forward. He's got a great supporting cast. He also has a really tough early schedule. And if you're eyeballing the late schedule, he has a Week 16 game against Baltimore as well. So, that's my only concern for him. I really do think he's ready to take a step forward. I think he's going to be I love the supporting cast. Little concerns about the offensive line. Nate Solder moving on is a little bit of an issue. So, but still, you look at what he did last year. You look at the numbers. It's hard to deny what he did last year as a rookie. He needs to cut down on the fumbles. Needs to, the interceptions. Interceptions weren't horrible for a rookie. So, so yes, I expect him to take a big jump. In fact, he was kind of my favorite, down the line quarterback, but then he kind of rose up the rankings. Then everyone kind of dialed back because they weren't feeling comfortable with the schedule. But I think if you look at the numbers from last year, he ranked in the top 5 4 times. Only Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, and Jameis Winston did it more. He had 25 plus points 4 times, and he's got pretty good mobility. So expecting even what he did last year, it would. I think that would exceed his draft value right now. So I'm kind of on board with him still, even with a tough early schedule. And I'm trying to dial back a little bit on the fears of the schedule in my mind, because we don't know what's going to happen. This is a weird offseason, right? And we see things every September. It's so volatile that maybe the defenses are behind the offenses to start the season. It's hard to figure out. So it's 1 point for 20 yards rushing, Emil. Maybe we can get that figured out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're real close there. I'll throw that in. How about receive? Well, anyway, that'll probably do it right there because they're real close to each other. And if you reduce the rushing, then that affects the rushing quarterbacks.
Yeah. So yes, I like him. Joe Burrow's growing on me, though, an awful lot. So Robert Kirsting has the 5th pick overall in a PPR league. Would we go Dalvin Cook, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or Miles Sanders? He's leaning Cook. However, the other two have great upside. I would take Cook, and would not knock you for taking either of the other two. I have Cook ranked number 4. I have Alvin Kamara 5. I have Edwards-Helaire 6. And Miles Sanders has fallen a little bit, but not like noticeably. He's still in my top 10. So that would be the order I would take them.
By the way, with 1 point for 20 yards rushing, Breeze does sneak above Dak Prescott. So that's what the algorithm's giving you with your scoring system. That's what's the beauty about putting your scoring system in, because you get a perspective that may be different than what you thought. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Or that you can follow it. You can still take that Prescott.
Yeah.
And also with Daniel Jones, you were talking about Burrow. You know, if you take Daniel Jones, you're going to be able to take him relatively late, and then you can get a second quarterback. And that second quarterback could be Burrow, most likely. It could be a lot of guys, including him. Then you cover yourself.
Right. I would agree with that. Steve L. had asked about Daniel Jones. Oh, because Cam Newton is available, we may have to drop Daniel Jones, by the way. Thanks. So, yeah, I mean, I think both of them are, I think both of them are kind of in that upside. Cam Newton, now that he, is locked in as a starter, my concerns with Cam Newton are very minimal. I think the Patriots will figure out ways to use him. You'll be surprised to learn that coaching staff is very good. I can think back to the time in Denver where Josh McDaniels made Tim Tebow a super relevant fantasy quarterback every single week, taking advantage of a different skill set than what we saw him take advantage of with Tom Brady. So I think they can make the adjustments necessary to make this work. I still probably prefer Daniel Jones, but I see tons of upside. Again, just to mention the concern for Cam Newton, I don't know how big of a concern it is because we haven't seen it yet, but he hasn't been able to threaten opposing defenses deep for 3 years now because of the shoulder. And that was a big problem last year, obviously. And the foot, I mean, if he's a huge, threat running, and I think he can be, I'd like to see him healthy. But I haven't seen that yet. I'm going to take the Patriots at their word since they're starting him. I'm guessing that they haven't seen anything that makes them worry. So, if you have some faith in that coaching staff and you like Newton a little bit, I wouldn't fault you. I think they're both quarterback 2s with huge upside. And thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. So let's jump back into the running backs there, Emil, because I think we're getting into some guys that are more interesting to handcuff,
yes.
Which would start with Ezekiel Elliott as the 3rd. I think Pollard is a guy that we all first thing, they're only keeping 2 running backs on the active roster. I mean, that tells you something right there. They're keeping Ezekiel Elliott and Pollard. And I don't think the price for Pollard, given that role and what he would be expected to do, the anticipated workload, the clear path to workload, I think that's a pretty reasonable price. What's Pollard's price right now?
10th round.
10th round?
Yep, 10th round.
Hell, I paid that for Adrian Peterson, and so.
And I think Pollard, if Ezekiel goes down, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think Pollard could do well. I think he did well. Good offensive line. So he's a guy, if you're looking at Davis, we talked about before, maybe he just can't do much to back up Christian Okoye, but maybe Pollard can actually have a better ceiling if Ezekiel goes down for a few weeks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that for me, that's a viable handcuff right there. I mean, if you're looking for the definition, look up the word in the dictionary, handcuff. And the second definition, not the handcuff, but the handcuff fantasy, it would be Pollard. It's reasonable price with a huge role if it came to fruition. Dalvin Cook is the other one, very popular to handcuff, and for the obvious reasons. He's been beat up and has had some issues. He was slow late last year. My problem with that is I don't like to pay the premium, and it's dropped a little bit. I've seen Madison go, and maybe some of this is because he goes a little higher to the guys who draft Dalvin Cook. Maybe that drives up the price a little bit, but he's an 8th round ADP. Well, how do you feel about that?
That's kind of expensive. That is expensive, but again, you're supporting your number 1 pick, which is going to be one of the top picks in the first 6 picks typically. That's expensive, but I think it's probably worth it. Again, I don't do it. When I do it, I just don't do handcuffs, but that doesn't mean it's not a good idea. I just kind of I get what I get. That's expensive, but probably a smart decision.
It is, and I guess, he was beat up too late last season, so Michael Boone got some work, and, he's still there, and I'm just not as sure about him. Like with Pollard, there's nobody else on the roster. It's a pretty easy call for me. Oh, and he's 2 rounds cheaper. Even easier call for me. And this might just be me being a cheapskate, which is entirely possible. But yeah, I think, and this is, I think, a great example. And why I wanted to go through this is there's a range of possible choices here, and they have to do with price. And do we really think someone's getting the full workload? And I think the one end of the spectrum is Pollard, where there's literally nobody else there. They would bring somebody off the practice squad or whatever once it happened, but he's it until he's not. So I like that an awful lot. It's easier for me to pay for it. Have a couple questions. Late sleeper pick. How do we like Allen Lazard? Says Nike J24, one of our favorites here in the chats. He was highly targeted at the end of last season, and he may well be again. He does seem to be locked in as the wide receiver 2 behind Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers seems to have a level of trust with him. They have a little bit of a relationship, a friendship off the field as well. But then Aaron Rodgers just cited Marquez Valdez-Scantling as having a huge offseason, right? A great camp. And there's been some talk of Equanimeous St. Brown rising. So, I think the expectation for the Packers would be that those guys do get a little more work, but I don't know that it comes at the expense of Lazard. So,
bottom of the 11th round right now for Lazard, that's pretty affordable.
Yeah, I don't think that's a horrible price, right? But what is Valdez-Scantling's price?
There's not a number for him right now.
Right, so he's maybe even a freebie. Same with St. Brown. So it's basically Devontae Adams, Allen Lazard, Valdez-Scantling, St. Brown, and Jake Kumerow are the guys that have potential to get playing time. And I guess that's the I think for me, Lazard, second man on the totem pole, is enough for me. But there may be some upside even later. So. But definitely a guy that should be on your radar if you're really interested in investing that passing attack after a disappointing season. Yes, Todd, we did hear about Valdez-Scantling last year. He has to do better this year, that's for sure. Terry Hillier, what round do you see David Johnson in non-PPR?
Non-PPR. Let's look that up real quick here.
Yeah, I'd have to look.
He's going early, mid-3rd round right now.
About the same spot as he is in PPR, which I think people look at Carlos Hyde showing up there last year and having a reasonable production, over the course of a season, and thinking that if David Johnson is, half the man he used to be, that's still more than Carlos Hyde. I don't know that that's an unreasonable position to take.
That's a good way to look at it.
I think that's fairly defensible. Looking for Hyde finished his running back 22 last year.
Wow.
Right, ran for 1,000 yards, caught 10 passes. I think David Johnson, my expectation would be he could catch more. Also, if you look back to the first 6 games when he was still a little bit healthy, I do think that David Johnson showed signs of life in Arizona. So, and the best thing about him is the investment the Texans made in him is pretty immense. It's called DeAndre Hopkins. So they do have some motivation to get something out of him. And I think it's interesting that the Texans now have 2 of the top 10 highest paid running backs in the NFL on their roster. Duke Johnson's number 10 on that
That's
list.
Incredible.
Timothy Miller wants to know if Hunter Henry can be a top 5 to 8 tight end this year. Yes, he can. Will he be? I'm not 100% sure. Look, he's a great what he is. He's a great red zone weapon, a great receiver over the middle. He is a very good player. You wonder how much of that, what we've seen in the past, is due to Phillip Rivers, kind of tendency to look that way, the tight end way, over the course of his career. And maybe that's some of it, but some of it's certainly by design. It's the same with Austin Eckler. I get people asking about him. And I do think it seems like, some of that was Phillip Rivers. If you watch the game, the eyeball test tells you Phillip Rivers was locking in on guys, right? And and he didn't have a lot of weapons in the wide receiving core last year either. So understandable as well there. So we'll see what Tyrod Taylor does. He throws the deep ball pretty well. So just to be clear, I'm kind of avoiding that range of tight ends, that 5 to 10 range. I'm drafting earlier or I'm drafting later, and that's one of the reasons why. I'm not 100% sold on that, and wouldn't blame you. I think he has the talent. I'm just not sure he has the quarterback, and if the scheme is going to help him out as much as it did with Phillip Rivers. Emil?
Well, right now he's going as the 10th tight end, and like you said, he's kind of about the 8th round. So, I mean, if you could get him a little later in a position in your draft where you feel comfortable taking a little bit of a risk, that would work. If you lose him, you got all these other guys that we've talked about before from 9 to 14 that have a lot of potential. So I would kind of lay back on him, and if he falls to you a little bit, then I feel more comfortable taking him. If not, take one of the later guys. There's a bunch of them.
Todd Ullman wants to know what you rank for Fournette's approximate ADP. I think that's where people are going to take him. I think it's safe to say that Bruce Arians saying that it's Ronald Jones's job and all those things. It is now. That is true. Also true, he signed Leonard Fournette, and so I mean, if Ronald Jones had a super tight grip on that starting job, I don't know, they would have signed him. Todd, I'm just curious too. What Packer receiver would you invest in, not named Devontae Adams, if there is one? But yeah, I honestly, I think I'm looking right now at today's ADP on Fantasy Calculator, and I'm seeing Fournette is the 8th round. I'll take some of that. I'll definitely take some of that. And I happened to be drafting. I was in Mike Clay's league. It's a going deep league. It's a really weird league where you draft 18 rounds. You start 13 of those guys, so the bench is very shallow. Starting pool is obviously very big. There's no kickers or defenses, so it's all skill players. And I was coming up on the clock, and J.J. Zachariason drafting ahead of me. My texts start going off that Fournette is signed with the Buccaneers. J.J. is in 2 drafts at the same time. And I believe was not paying as much attention to his text as I was, and maybe he wouldn't have taken him. I don't know. But I got him right as that move, within minutes in the 9th round. I thought, wow, that's pretty good value, especially in a unique draft like that. If he's still going in the 8th, I'll take a shot on that. I think that's fair. 4th round, I'm getting a little worried. Yeah, and by the way, Todd Ullman, all the KC wide receivers not named Hill. He's drafting Lazard only. I think that's the proper approach. And he says the same with all the Kansas City wide receivers not named Hill. And to that, I could not agree more, man. I see Mecole Hardman. And I'm not saying Mecole Hardman can't play or that he's not talented. I'm just saying 1 week it's going to be him. 1 week it's going to be Sammy Watkins. 1 week it's going to be Demarcus Robinson. 1 week it's going to be Byron frickin' Pringle. I almost swore. And
the problem, even in a best ball league, maybe those guys you could take, but there's still so many of them. But maybe Hardman you could take, in a best ball and hope to get some productivity out of him.
Yeah, and Timothy Miller wants to know yeah, exactly. And I don't, other than best ball, I don't want to do that. I totally agree, Todd. Timothy Miller wants to know, is the Fournette signing a case where they could cut him easily if he acts a fool, or are they pretty committed financially? No, it's a $2 million deal. He has some incentives. Define act a fool. Is that sitting on the bench and being a jackass? Okay, we've seen him do that before. Beyond that, off the field, we haven't seen a heck of a lot. So, I don't know. I just think he's probably, in the end, a better overall player than Ronald Jones right now. But I don't think Fournette is super high end. I think we're all remembering that, the draft capital invested in him. He's never been that guy, that top 5 draft pick guy. So I don't know that I expect him to turn into that. But I am a little interested in that he caught 76 passes last year. And I'm not sure Ronald Jones, I'm a bit surly too, but yeah, you're still here. Come on, man. But yeah, so you hear the talk about Ronald Jones dropping passes. I think Ronald Jones has built up some goodwill there, worked hard over the offseason, and added some bulk, has worked on his pass catching. And he came into the league very young. I think he was 20 when he came into the league, so he's still a kid. And so, I'm not dismissing him. And I know Bruce Arians called him a good insurance policy. I talked to Rick Stroud from the Tampa Bay Times yesterday about this whole thing, and he said the same thing. He's a really good insurance policy. He thinks it's, Ronald Jones' job, just like Bruce Arians said. And I agree. It is his job until it's not. And like everyone in the NFL, I mean, how many drop passes, how many missed pass blocking assignments would it take? And Arians mentioned, Fournette's a good insurance policy. How long before you break that out? I don't know. So let's see. So they could cut him. I mean, I don't think they're so financially committed that they need to keep him around. But I think also that they're not so financially committed means why. Because it's $2 million. I think $2.1 million is what they're paying him. So pretty cheap. Todd Ullman, I can see hope Fournette is stud running back for top offense by week 3 or 4. I think that's that's definitely within the range of possible outcomes. Matthew Zake, PPR Dynasty team, thoughts? Yes. Tell us players, and we'll have more thoughts. Let's get another one of the squeeze another one of the running backs in. I wanted to get to Clyde Edwards-Helaire because my assumption earlier was, or early this offseason, was DeAndre Washington. They brought him in, they saw him play for Oakland, and that he was probably the most likely guy to be that number 2 once Damian Williams opted out. It is not the case. It is Darrell Williams who is the guy right now. So much so that my buddy Nate Taylor at The Athletic thinks there'll be a pretty reasonable timeshare for that. So for that first game at least. And look, I don't think you should worry about Darrell Williams limiting Edwards-Helaire's upside or ceiling or lowering the ceiling. But if you're drafting a handcuff, it seems like Darrell Williams is the guy. Emil, where's he going in drafts right now?
He's going in the bottom of the 13th round, which makes him an excellent handcuff because he may even be a productive guy as the season progresses, at least early on.
All right, Brian Larkin has a start question, and I'll wait. I'll wait for you, Matthew Zake. Brian, starting question for week 1. So it's not yet week 1, so I get why you're asking. I'm probably going to wait and see some more developments. There's going to be a lot of cut downs and things that change these things. If you made me decide today, in your flex, it would be Will Fuller because I don't know what Moss and Taylor's role is going to be necessarily. Maybe I'll have a little more clarity on that next week. And if so, I know you are a subscriber, so you'll want to check our rankings. Go live early Thursday morning, like Wednesday night at about midnight Pacific time. So when you get up Thursday, you'll see our full rankings and plenty of time to change your lineups. Those rankings do adjust throughout the week as developments come in and news and information, that might affect those rankings. But right now, it sounds like Zach Moss is going to have a pretty reasonable role, maybe even the lead role if Devin Singletary can't hold on to the ball. We'll see how much the reporters on the ground have been leading us astray or not. I'll remind you that reporters in Jacksonville thought that Leonard Fournette looked fantastic. And reporters in Washington thought Adrian Peterson was locked in as the early down back. So we're kind of flying a little bit blind on these things. So, Will Fuller to me is going to be the wide receiver 1 or 1A or 1B, however you want to view that.
And guess what? Will Fuller is healthy in week 1. There's a bonus.
Yes, Kansas City's defense is fairly tough, though. It's not a great matchup. Jonathan Taylor also, though, is a player I love, and I'd like to, I don't want to just invest in my narrative here because I think he's going to be the best rookie running backs. I'm not going to tell you this because you have a little time to figure this out. So do we. So it would be Fuller for me week 1. And I think, I've talked about this in many of our chats. And if you've missed it, if you put the last 16 games, healthy games, where Will Fuller was targeted 7 times, he would be the wide receiver 7 in last year's rankings, right? So, he has been super productive when he's healthy, even with DeAndre Hopkins. I think without DeAndre Hopkins, it doesn't kill him. So,
yeah, well, despite the matchup with Kansas City, is that the Thursday night game? I think it is. You got a perfect situation starting Will Fuller because of the 2 rookie running backs not really sure what they're going to do in week 1. So it's pretty attractive to go with Will Fuller in week 1 as a flex.
Ted Cox with a dumb kicker question. He wants to pick up Ryan Suckup with the Bucs offense, but has to drop either Aiden Gonzalez or Gonzalez in Arizona, Jake Elliott Eagles, which of any of the other Rams rookie apparently won the job. So thanks. you know,
That's not a bad way to go. Realizing that the guy may not last because he's just coming in, and you may kickers you're typically moving around, streaming and stuff like that. So it's a hot
I do
offense.
the opposite. I want to not stream.
Yeah.
I want to not stream. So I want the guy with the week 13 bye, Ryan Suckup. So, and it's going to be a pretty good offense. So I'm probably going that direction, riding with it. The Cardinals also have a relatively late bye. I can't remember exactly what it is. And Jake Elliott, honestly, I'm kind of ambivalent on this one, Ted. If I was just sitting here deciding on one of my rosters, I would go with Suckup because I think it's going to be a pretty good offense and it's a really late bye. That sounds cheesy, but it's true. I don't go deep on the analysis of the kickers. They're good, and they play with a good offense, and they have a late bye. I'm pretty much in on that. And I think the fact that they let go of Matt Gay, who last year was kicker 5,
Yeah,
and
that's true.
The fact that they turned him loose and went with Suckup says something to me as well. But
yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Todd Ullman agrees, yes, start Will Fuller when you can. I knew Ullman was a Fuller guy. So Matthew Zake in his Dynasty PPR as a quarterback, Ryan Stafford and Herbert. Running backs, Connor Gurley, Mostert, Ronald Jones, Damian Harrison, Justin Jackson, Mike. Okay. Well, that's pretty solid. I mean, you've got some guys that'll win now for you. You've got some guys that will win in the future for you, perhaps.
That's good. It's good to have Ridley on there.
I want to get younger. Yeah, I mean, I guess I think some of your top wide receivers are younger players. Yeah, I could live with that for sure. Dallas Goedert, maybe in 2 years, will be the only tight end in Philadelphia. So that seems not totally unreasonable.
Uh-huh.
So back to the Darrell Williams question, Emil. What are you doing
Yes.
with Darrell? Are you trying to acquire him 13th round ADP to back up Clyde Edwards-Helaire? That seems like a wise choice.
Well, that's a great choice. Now, I've got him on my list without as a handcuff, just taking him in general because he could be quality. It's Kansas City, and 13th round, bottom of the 13th round. That's in a 12-team league. I look at pick up late anyway. I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. We'll talk about Alvin Kamara here, and Latavius Murray is a phenomenal handcuff. He's also a reasonable standalone play, right? I mean,
he did really well last year when Kamara was ailing. Yeah, he's a great pick. Yeah, now let's see.
And so
he's eighth round.
So I think for a guy who could give you a little bit of standalone value on weeks when Alvin Kamara is still playing, but also some huge upside. We saw it last year against Chicago and Arizona. I think there was 3 touchdowns, one of them through the air, ran for over 200 yards against 2 of the toughest defenses, combined against 2 of the toughest defenses in the league. It's a really well-designed offense, and I think that's the key here. You got a Sean Payton offense and a good cast around him. So I think he's a guy, of all the handcuffs, he may be one of the ones I'm most interested in as a standalone type player. Although some of the later guys I like as well, and maybe we'll get to those. If not, if we get more questions, we'll skip that out. We do have a little more time, so if you do want to get in with questions, please do. And we'll get to those as we get.
I'll throw you a question about handcuffs. What happened to Giovanni Bernard? He's hardly taken.
Yeah, nobody because Joe Mixon is going to get every single carry, and I know this because I have Joe Mixon as my number 6 running back. So
I'm assuming Giovanni Bernard is the backup, the handcuff.
Yeah, no, I think Todd Ullman makes a great point. Travion Williams is the guy nobody's drafting. Rodney Anderson is gone, and so I do think the handcuff would be Williams. And I think I agree, Todd. I think you're right, and I think he's the guy. I think Giovanni Bernard is widely perceived to be the other guy, and he is another guy, but I don't think he's the guy that would come in and get the early down work, but I think they would split it. So I think that's why Williams doesn't viewed as like a true handcuff, is because, number one, nobody knows he exists. Number two, if they do know he exists, they're maybe a little bit skeptical about whether he comes in and gets that same kind of workload. But also, he's free. You're not paying for him. So I do not have a problem with this, only in really deep rosters. And, be quick with the trigger on the waiver wire. But, that's easier said than done, especially for someone like me. who is notoriously slow on the waiver wire. We're hoping my fantasy GM fixed that. So that's why Emil built that whole thing, because I whined so much about not being able to do all my waiver wire moves because I'm in so many leagues. So what that does is we can pull in all your rosters from across all the various commissioner platforms, and it will assess your free agent needs, tell you who's available, who's not available, who you need to get, who you should be targeting, who the other owners in your leagues might target, all these things that will be very handy for you. So that'll be coming next week as well as we go into the regular season. My fantasy GM, good stuff. All right, so let's see. Frank, 10-team leagues are Johnson, Melvin, Ingram, Mark Ingram, legitimate running back twos, and Mox. I've been starting with CMC, Kelsey, L-Jax. I know this is probably not a smart thing to do. I don't think it's the worst thing to do, Frank W., to be honest with you. I think once you start with Christian McCaffrey, you feel very free to do things like what you did, because I've done it. And I think it's just the fact you have this super high floor, high ceiling guy, and that's got this huge path to massive touches. So I'm not against this, and I do know it puts you a little behind the eight ball, but I think you can get by with the wide receiver. You can definitely get by at wide receiver. I think there's all kinds of value, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th round, including Todd Ullman's favorite, Will Fuller, is one of the guys I'd be targeting there. There's also Devontae Parker in that range, Marquise Brown in that range, A.J. Green in that range, Tyler Boyd in that range, Michael Gallup in that range, tons of wide receivers. So yeah. So there you go. Picking for the one hole after Godwin gone, no player looks attractive. I tend to agree with that, what Todd just said about nobody looking as attractive. And I know I've said this, so if you've been here for these chats before and you've heard this before, I apologize. But for people who haven't, when I get to a spot in a draft where I don't love anybody, I can find a quarterback I do love. And it's like throughout the draft. So if it's in that 2nd, 3rd round, then it's Pat Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. And I don't like any of the players I'm looking at. I'm looking at like Melvin Gordon and a bunch of Amari Cooper or something. Going, no, I'm taking a quarterback. So I think and honestly, getting that top tight end is something I'm all for too. So getting the tight end, whether it's Kelsey or Kittle in the 2nd, I'm all about getting Mark Andrews if I can in the 3rd, even the 4th if possible. So yeah, that's okay, and I think you'll be fine. Thoughts on Van Jefferson? Thoughts on Cousins throwing more this year? Thoughts on Van Jefferson are everything we're hearing from the Rams camp is what I heard from Matt Waldman in May when we were talking about this rookie class. I have two very highly owned wide receivers in my dynasty drafts this year, both of them because of Matt Waldman. And one of them is Van Jefferson. He just said, get him. It looks like he's going to be in line for a field stretching role. Sorry, Josh Reynolds. It looks like you might be in trouble there with that. The other one he talked to me about was Quintez Cephas. And I have a fair amount of shares of him as well in Dynasty. So, and he's looked reasonably good in camp too, though not as good as Van Jefferson, who appears like looks like he's going to have a role. Also, thoughts on Cousins throwing more this year? Entirely possible. Very good with the play action. The thing I like, though, is that most of those passes will be funneled to one guy. Adam Thielen looks like he's in line for a big workload without Stephon Diggs there. Because Olabisi Johnson is wide receiver 2, which means Justin Jefferson is not coming through to the degree they hoped, or that I hoped. Certainly, I had some high expectations for him jumping into a role. Maybe he'll get there, but I think Cousins will throw enough. Emil, any thoughts on that?
Oh, those all make good sense. Vance Jefferson, obviously you could get him really late. Of course, we're probably talking dynasty here. I'm not sure, but
yeah, I mean, just in a regular redraft, I mean, I think as a late round guy, I think he's fine. I'm not sure what kind of floor he has, but I mean, if you kind of buy into the reports, and I mean, I've talked to people who have watched him on the ground. Jordan Rodriguez from The Athletic has 2 weeks ago was telling me this, that he is going to be the guy that's the number 3. And so,
cool.
So yes, go on with that. Nike 24 has a BS chat. What do you make of the Adrian Peterson news, and where will he go? Well, he talked about that a couple of times, but we'll talk about it again because I think you missed it. I don't know where he'll go, but he'll go somewhere because he's not done. And I quit being in the business of saying Adrian Peterson can't do anything after he came back from that ACL and ran for 1 million yards. So, but it looks like, I mean, I think it's safe to say Antonio Gibson is the guy that everyone's going to be focused on. Bryce Love, I think, is draftable. Peyton Barber may have a bigger role than we think. And J.D. McKissick is in the mix, too, as a receiving back. The thing that Ron Rivera did say is it's not so much anything that Adrian Peterson did or didn't do. It's that they love the other guys. The list of other guys starts with Antonio Gibson. So that's where we're at. We have a few more minutes here, guys.
It'll probably take an injury to get Peterson on another team, most likely.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. But, I mean, there's other guys out there right now. I mean, Devonta Freeman's still out there. There's a handful of guys. And price may have something to do with this, too. I mean, who's cheap? Devonta Freeman seems like he priced himself out when he didn't take $4 million a year from the Seahawks. And maybe Leonard Fournette was paying attention as he took $2 million to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Timothy Miller has a gut feeling the Rams' offense may be back. Seems like fresh air without the girly cloud. Maybe so. Maybe the offensive line is going to be a problem. Could go either way. I do think
didn't Fournette get incentives also?
He got some incentives if he gets some playing time. So, but $2 million, is half of $4 million. So yeah. So there's that. We're going to wrap this up here soon, everybody. We'd love for you to ask a few more questions. We have some time. If you have questions, we'll stick around and answer them. If you don't have questions, there is work to be done. And that work is done on footballdiehards.com, where you will find our August update draft guide ongoing. If you haven't checked it out, go there now, footballdiehards.com/free trial. Check it out. Take the tour. If you like what you see and you're ready to order, go to the order page and use the promo code DIEHARDS to get a 15% discount on something that's already incredibly affordable. Will you be doing a show on Labor Day? What is Labor Day? Next Monday?
Monday.
We're going to be getting into probably not on Monday. We are going to be back, though, tomorrow. Are you going to do both the drafts on the YouTube channel, Emil?
Yep. 8 o'clock, we're going to do a best ball Eastern time, and then we're going to do 12-team PPR mock at 11 Eastern time. And
I'll be awake and show up for that one. And I'll comment. It'll be you and John Lobb and Kyle Dvorak in a 12-team. The earlier best ball will be you and Jersey Jen Ryan. And then going forward, Brian, once we get into the regular season content, you'll see various things start ramping up. We'll be doing DFS videos on Wednesday and Sunday before kickoff, so you have some help setting DFS lineups. You'll be able to ask questions and get in there. And if you have questions beyond DFS, I'm sure the fellows will answer. And then I'll be doing my usual injury update videos on Saturday. So let's say you're working all week, you don't have time to read 8,000 updates. Like I don't have time to write them, but I still do. Come read them. But if you don't, I do a video update so that you can basically catch up on everything you need to know in about 10 minutes or less, hopefully, depending on how many injuries there are. And we'll have other content up. The podcast will be up every week. It'll help you with lineup information as well, along with the lineup optimizers, My Fantasy GM, tons of content available every single week. And if you want to go now, check out some of the Fantasy University classes to kind of get you up to speed for everything. That's great too. But tomorrow will be the last day of the daily preseason videos. And the early one will be just a best ball draft with Emil and Jen. I'll show up and take questions and comment on the 12-team draft that'll be going on with Emil, Wild, and Dvorak. And that's kind of how we'll roll into the season. As always, kind of things ramp up as we move into the season. Some of the features become available as we move on and realize how cool things are that we can do and come up with new ideas. But the Fantasy GM will be live and available to you to start taking advantage of the technology to make your life easier. Manage your team better. You're a good manager. Manage it better, more easily, with less time. You make all the decisions. You're pulling the trigger, but the information is compiled and presented to you in a way that can make your job much more efficient. And God, I need that. So kudos to Emil for putting that together. We think you're going to like it. Get back with us. Let us know. If you're not, hit the subscribe button right here and now so you catch the content as we go into the regular season. We appreciate you all coming, and we'll talk to you soon. In some cases, if you come back tomorrow, it'll be then. So